All right.
Welcome everyone to a super exciting new year, and I'm so glad you are here. This is Building Schema through Interactive Mapping, and it is with myself. I'm Shirley Steele, and this is Jason is with us, as well as Keandra. Keandra is going to be our participant and super hostess, and we are going to have a fantastic time going through this training. So our training is building schema through interactive mapping. And so my question to you, as you're looking at this, what I want you to think about as I'm trying to activate your prior knowledge here is the statement, where am I? So when you look at the head here with all the things going on in it, what does the where have to do with the how and the why? And what I would like for you to do is to think about that and write down in your participant guide that you also have your thoughts on how you think the where has to do with the why and the how. And I'll give you a second to do that. Are there any questions? Moving right along. Our learning goal today, as an adult learner, I'm learning about building schema and background knowledge through mapping. Our success criteria will be to explain the importance of activating and building background knowledge. And you will be able to implement interactive mapping in your classroom to increase student connections to learning, achievement, and the joy of learning. Okay, here is our hook activity. We're about to have some fun here. So I want you to memorize the sequence below without writing. You have 10 seconds starting now. Don't write anything. I'm about to change the screen. Now on a piece of paper or on your participant guide, write down as many of those letters as you can. And then tell me very quickly, once you write it down, how many did you get correct? Jason, did you play?
I did.
How many did you get correct?
I got them all correct.
Oh,
but okay. I cheated a little bit because I know
you've done this before. Oh, or you this guy down here. You're this guy down here. That's what it is. Keandra, how did you do?
I think I got 7.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
So you're the pink Einstein or the blue? Okay. All right. So some of you had already done this. If you have, I apologize for that. I want you to look at those acronyms. If you have not done this before, and if you notice it spelled out different agency or different things that we are familiar with, like TV, IRS, CNN, FBI, the USA. So in your participant guide, why is it that you now immediately recognize these acronyms? And Keandra or Jason, why do you think that is? Like, would you be able to immediately write these down?
Yeah, I mean, if you had the kind of the breakdown here into these different, recognizable kind of acronyms here, it would definitely make it easier. But the first time I attempted it, to be honest, I did not see the pattern, but I didn't, I kind of looked at it and then
I didn't either.
Yeah, I had a hard time remembering. I think I got like the first 5 or 6 correct. So
yeah, I think for me, because before when they were all together, my brain kind of looked at each letter as a piece of new information I was trying to remember. But this way, there's 5 chunks of information. Like I can just say, oh, TV. I know what that is. I watch it every night. IRS, the people who steal all my money. CNN, the news channel. So I can make those connections and remember each of those as a chunk, which lets me remember more of the letters. Whereas before I could only remember TV, IRS all together.
Thank you. So my next question is, how do you think students compute things when they're launched into a new lesson in which we think they have no background knowledge on? And sometimes we assume they have no background knowledge on. They may even think they have no background knowledge on it, and maybe they don't. But if they don't recognize it, could they possibly know more if they were prompted and if it was something that was recognizable to them as being related to something they already know? That's just a wondering of mine. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's related to something I already know, I can attach meaning to it. I can associate emotion with it. I may or may not know something about it. I may have some preconceived notions you need to fix, but I think it sets me up for greater success as a learner.
So what does this indicate about hooks, pre-assessment, and setting up a new unit?
Well, I think, when you formulate hooks, you want to at least connect it to the student's prior knowledge. Same thing with pre-assessment, you expect that your students already may know some things. So kind of frame the pre-assessment based on what you think or what you expect the students might already know, as well as maybe some items that they'll discover as they dig deeper.
Very good. I like that answer. I totally agree with that. And so I want to give you just a moment for those of you watching the webinar to write in your participant guide any thoughts you may have gotten from this, or any thoughts you have, or something somebody said on how to activate background knowledge information and make it recognizable to students. Take just a moment. Now, I hope I gave you enough time. You can always pause me, okay, if I did not. For schema, Jason, can you read that first one for us, please?
Sure. It's a mental structure that helps us figure out how things work as well as organize information. Schema about a topic begins simply and gets more complicated as students add more information over time and with the experience.
Okay. And Keandra, will you read the second one?
Absolutely. For students, it roughly refers to background knowledge already known about a subject, which may be correct or incorrect.
Why do you think I put that on there about which may be a misconception, correct or incorrect?
Well, from my experience, I've found that it's really good to identify misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way you can start the deconstruction of that misconception and help them build the proper and correct learning, because misconceptions are extremely powerful. They
Yes.
Really,
or when a concept is a familiar concept in one area, but maybe not in social studies. Like if I might know what a conductor is for my science class,
Mm-hmm.
moving heat, conducting that energy, excuse me. But if we're getting ready to talk about the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman, known as the conductor, that could lead to some misinformation. I might be confused. So if you knew that that was my only frame of reference as a teacher, you could build upon that. Oh, just like moving energy, as we conduct heat, you can also conduct people, things, you can move them. So you can kind of draw on one subject area to another.
Awesome. That's great insight, you guys. I have to ask something that's not on here right now. Do you think we spend the time at the beginning of units or lessons to ferret out some of this information, such as hooks and pre-assessment, and figuring out what they're building on? Because when Jason was talking, I got this picture in my head, and it was a building, and this building had a foundation, but the foundation had all these cracks in it, misconceptions, things of that nature, or it had things that were missing, and yet we're building all this stuff on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which once you get to a certain point and the misconception is realized, sometimes, you know, it could have really bad effects on their learning. So what do y'all think about that? Do you think we spend enough time, or do you think people are too rushed sometimes to really take that time to slow down and gear them up and activate and make sure that that schema, what we're building on, is correct?
I think that's probably an area most of us, struggle with, is giving the time, for students, and kind of figuring out a good formula on how to deconstruct that and then rebuild it
Mhm.
properly.
Yeah. I know I was talking to somebody today and they were mentioning, talking about anticipation guides and like them open-ended questioning and things of that nature. That really told them a lot about what the students did know and did not know, and it helped them identify misconceptions, things like that. I'm getting a little off script, but you guys bring up some fantastic, I mean, really great insights on this. So think about schema and background activation and how that can accelerate learning and connections, because I know that there's so much about accelerated learning and accelerate learning. And but how do you see these two things being connected to each other? The schema, the background, activating learning, activating background knowledge, and then making the connections with to accelerate the learning.
Well, I think when kids have a kind of a starting space, where they have some type of foundation, hopefully when it's not full of cracks through misconceptions, but when they have something to build off of, um, that can help them when they make those connections. They can help them acquire new learning a little bit more quickly.
Oh, that you're right. What do you think, Keandra?
Oh, I mean, I agree. If we're not pre-assessing, if we're not engaging students, if we're not having them tap into their schema before we get started, then we're really not differentiating for our learners. How
Mhm.
can we group students? How can we plan intentional small groups and intentional interventions and extension and make sure we're maximizing student learning time if we didn't pre-assess them, if we didn't tap into what they already know?
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys, for all of your input and ideas. Okay, now this brain, now think about how building a better mental map of information can increase schema and learning. Looking at the brain, it was above, but I changed it to the side. What can you say about cross connections with maps by looking at that brain? And we are not going to put it into the chat, but we're going to discuss it. I have a thing down there at the bottom that you can complete. It's also in your participant guide, but I also put it on the screen. So looking at that brain, and we're about to move into the interactive mapping, what can you say about different connections with mapping? And I will give you a hint. When I gave the definitions about how it went from simple to more complex, that's where I ended up. I don't know if that's where you'll end up on it.
I think for me, the image reinforces that it's not a singular study of a topic at a time. We're not looking at things in isolation. We're looking at things together in multiple processes and multiple pieces of information. And I think we're going to naturally strive to make sense of it. So try to make those connections, make those categories. Like right now, I'm sitting here going, I sit on the couch to watch TV while I eat dinner or and play video games. Those things kind of go together. Or when I have too many hot dogs and Cokes there, that I need to get myself to the gym and work out more, things like that. So I think in my mind, they go together.
You see me drawing these little synopsises in his
Yes.
brain. Okay. So it's like, as it gets more complicated and we connect more and more, they have their schema, it gets much more complicated. So that's why I'm drawing on his brain here. But yeah, what were you going to say, Jason?
Oh, I just agree with what Keandra was saying there, and I think that's true with any learning. I think about today. I was driving a little ways and chatting with a friend of mine, and some things that I was driving by, I hadn't been there in a while, and it activated some memories. And I look at the brain and you drawing all those synapses, and I think about
Mhm.
how those little visual cues helped me think about something, but also connected to something else and connected to something else. And so my story got longer and longer as I went, because I'm like, oh yeah, and then this, and then and that's how our brains really do work. And I think that's how kids' brains work. And so you have to really find ways to grow those synapses, to create multiple paths to get, build on that prior learning. So I like this example. This is
Well, thank you
solid.
so much. And y'all are awesome participants. You're the greatest ever. And if you want, in your participant guide, you can complete the following. Schema is created from blank to more blank over time. Shall we do it together? Schema is created from blank to more blank over time. What do y'all think goes there?
Simple to more
Simple.
complex. Over time.
Yes. Giving students blank opportunities,
Multiple,
many, various, yes,
many
to
opportunities
blank with prior blank.
to connect with prior, I would say
Yes.
prior knowledge to connect with
Yes.
prior knowledge. Yeah.
And it should say which can decrease the time it takes to blank new information.
Acquire, activate,
Mhm. Yes. And leads to
greater,
blank student achievement. Absolutely greater.
Greater.
Yes,
It's like
yes,
to
greater.
awesome student
Yes,
achievement.
awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Spectacular, fantastic, all those superlatives. Oh, I guess I have to get rid of the annotating tool before I can move on. Okay, here we go. So how do I get rid of that though? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, y'all are going to learn something. I have to clear the annotation, right? Clear all drawings. Oh, there we go.
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay, y'all learned
I
something
think we
from
skipped
my
a
mistake.
slide there.
Okay. It still doesn't want to quit annotating, but okay. Interactive mapping. In your opinion, how does interactive mapping connect students to the unit of study and build upon and create more background knowledge? And I think we've already partially answered that.
Do you want me to answer? Because I know the answers on that one.
Yes, answer that, please.
You know what? I'll answer it in the next part of the presentation.
Okay, there we go. Interactive mapping. Without further ado, I introduce again Jason Eilenfeld from Active Classroom to show you some new mapping features and for you to have time to explore activities that are connected to upcoming topics in your units.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Shirley. So Shirley kind of talked about the why, and now I'm going to show you guys a little bit about the how. So here in Dallas ISD, you guys have access to Active Classroom. And we've just recently added some new features and updates for all Dallas ISD teachers and students. And I'm really excited to share some of those with you. I'm going to touch on the first one, the digital atlas, is something that you guys are already, you've already had access to, and you've had some things with there, but I'm also super excited to share with you the new digital maps tab, as well as the mapping activities. And Shirley, when she sends this out to you guys, is also going to provide you with a link that you can join my class. So you'll select the Dallas ISD January 4th class when you join it. And you'll just use a fake email, nothing real. You don't use your Dallas ISD because it won't work. But you're going to join my class and you're going to see it from the student side. And I've assigned to you guys several different activities that you can explore from a student view before you then try to assign these out to your students. I always feel like it's really good for us as educators to start off with experiencing what my students are going to experience before we launch into it. So I am going to share my screen now. And
I will say that the link he was talking about is in the participant guide.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, it's a registration link and you'll just click on it. It won't take you to this type of screen because this is my teacher account, but it will take you to a student account, which I'm going to show you again here in just a few minutes. So in Dallas ISD, you guys have, this is the teacher page for Active Classroom. It should look very similar, if not exactly the same. And you will see you've got your curriculum maps on there for all the wonderful content that Active Classroom has to offer. But there's some great kind of ancillary materials. And I know you guys are familiar with the atlases, the Nystrom atlases. You guys in Dallas have had those for a very long time, in the print format as well now in the digital. But the new one here is the Maps tab. So let's take a quick look at the atlases. I just want to kind of remind you what's available to you and talk about, show you some examples of how you can help, build that schema and get kids familiar with not only what happened, but where it happened and why that's so important for anchoring learning. So I'm just going to choose, you'll see here, you guys will have access to the desk atlas. That's usually our 9th grade. World Atlas is 6th. 8th and 11th would be this Atlas of US history. 10th grade would be the Atlas of World History. And then you also have a lower version. The Atlas of Our Country's History is a great one that you can support some of your struggling learners. But what I will tell you guys about these atlases, if you're not familiar, is that they are very visual in nature and they're really good for supporting ELL students, special ed, as well as general ed. And I even use the older version of the US History Atlas with my AP US History students in 11th grade. And they still were able to build upon their learning using this. And that's actually what brought me to this company, is my love for the resources here. And so I got to see how my students reacted all across the spectrum, from my ELLs all the way up to my AP. And then of course, the brand new Texas history. So why don't we take a look? You know what, let's use the Texas history as the example. Actually, I don't want to do that. Sorry, let's use the US history as the example. I forgot they changed some of the formatting there on that one, and I have to go into a little more explanation. But as the 8th grade atlas loads in here, 8th and 11th, we can take a look at this, and let's go to page 37. I'm just typing in a random page and see where we go here. So now we're going to be looking at the Spanish claim to what's now the United States. So you'll see here that it offers small amounts of text to help with maybe some of the background knowledge they already have, but to give them some additional background knowledge before they go in and they can look at these maps. But what I like about this is that you'll see over here, we've got the different areas controlled by Spain. There are even more. There's additional information over here that students can click on for additional maps and images. And these are just a great way whenever you're introducing a topic. The way I like to talk about this and explain this is, okay, I'll go back to my AP students for a minute. So my AP students had to read, those massive chapters. If you've taught AP classes, you know that those kids are inundated with just so much reading. And we would have discussions in class and do debates and things like that, do DBQs. But a lot of the times, these cons and these big events that were happening, what I discovered was that in my students' brains, they were floating off in space. They were not connected to anything. And what I discovered once I started giving them some of the mapping activities, and I would send them home with an outline map and an atlas, instead of, okay, you guys got a break from reading this week. Instead, I want you to do these 5 mapping activities at home. And my scores and my responses and everything changed drastically once I started doing that. And I started asking my kids, well, why is this? Why? They're like, well, Mr. I, it makes more sense to me now. And I was like, why does it make more sense to you? And they said, well, I know where it happened. And I know that this happened here, but this also happened here. And then they started making all of these extra pathway connections. We're talking about the New England colonies, and they're having to do all that heavy reading. It's sure they kind of know where New England is, but when they actually do it on a map, they look at it on a map, they see it, and they physically mark it up. I saw just all of these amazing pathways forming with my students. So I'm a very firm believer in integrating geography and history and how important it is, even for your high flying students. And then again, of course, obviously you guys should be able to recognize the benefits for your lower students, the small amounts of text, the visuals that help them kind of make sense of what they're looking at and helping to build upon what their prior knowledge, but also add to that new learning, and then start to make those connections like Shirley showed with the brain. You know, all those extra synapses and connections are just, I think, are fantastic. And I think that's a great way to reach your students. I always, when I talk about that, those concepts floating off in space, I always talk about, you know, that using a map to anchor. You know, you have anchor charts in math, anchor charts in language arts and science. What are our anchor charts for social studies? I think maps are an important one that should be up in a constant image in our classroom all the time. So you guys will have access to those atlases, but now I want to go into the interactive mapping. This is your brand new tab that you guys have for Dallas ISD. And as this loads in, and just apologize here, give me a moment for it to load in, you're going to see that you have access to multiple Nystrom maps. And when I say multiple, there's almost 100 different maps that you can pull from in here, but you're not limited. You guys won't have this elementary level map. This is only in my account here, but you'll see you have the US history maps, world history, Texas, state maps, all of these secondary maps. And so if I wanted to overlay and look at the different biomes around the world, you know, I'm thinking maybe a world cultures classroom when you're understanding human environment interaction. And you're looking at this now, what's missing from this? Anybody, Shirley or Keandra, what's missing from this map? There's multiple answers, so you won't be wrong.
Names of countries, names of continents,
Names of
any kind of text.
countries,
Yeah.
continents. Yeah.
Well, no, they're there. Longitude and latitude lines are there.
Here's the big one. The
Say
legend.
The legend, yeah.
Legend. Oh yeah, the
right.
legend.
Yeah, because you can't interpret a map just, I mean, unless you have background. If you're familiar with what it is and you have an idea of what it is and you're familiar with the earth, and you could look at it and be like, yeah, that kind of looks like desert and forest regions and things like that. You could kind of, you know, guess that. But can our students do that in 6th grade? You know, maybe not. You know, for a lot of kids, 6th grade is unfortunately where they really start getting a lot of heavy social studies, and that's when they're really kind of tasked with it, and so they may not bring some of that background knowledge. I mean, obviously we do a lot of work there in elementary and try to help build that up, but we know that when you have those dedicated social study courses, once you get to middle school and high school, sometimes those kids don't bring that background knowledge. So I encourage using these maps for all grade levels here, but you'll see that we've got things like this land cover series. So we're looking at an image of what a tropical rainforest is. What are croplands? Now we're looking at how humans have interacted with the environment and changed the environment. And then, of course, our semi-desert and desert. It's going to give us a nice picture there showing us cactus. So we have that good mental image to help build on here. But with this interactive mapping activity or interactive digital maps, there are a lot of tools that are built in. And so we can click on. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, I'm getting a notice. I'm having some poor sound quality. Oh,
You sound fine.
that's good. Okay, just wanted to double check. All right, so built into this map, you can click on this eye here, and this is going to highlight all of the countries, and you can click on the countries for more information. There is a, so right here's the kind of command. I can click on Egypt, and it's going to give me the flag of Egypt as well as the population and the capital. But I can click on more info to dive a little bit deeper. But what I really like about these digital maps are the fact that you can interact with the maps. So the students can add different content, different layers. And just think of this, if you are working with, I just discovered what was wrong. My computer was not plugged in. I'm getting all kinds of notifications that my battery was low. Okay, there we go. So here you can see the geography. It's going to give us all kinds of information, population density. When I click on people in society, it's going to tell me about their nationality, the different languages, the religions that you might find in that country. It even gets like telecommunications and things like that, which is just good for building some of that background knowledge. But now I task my students with, okay, now I want you guys to go into Egypt and I want you to add some push pins, and I want you to tell me a little bit about I'm going to say religion, religion in Egypt. And so my students can build out here, and I can say it's Muslim and Christian. Those were the two that saw on the right. And so I could add that. Maybe I could add some additional information. I could add a picture, or maybe I find a video that I want to embed, and I can embed the video right here into this. But the key point about this is your students are actually doing. You'll want to give them guidance, of course, as a teacher, be that facilitator and say, okay, these are the things I'm looking for. You go and you build your map out. Maybe you want them to identify different types of agriculture. And so maybe they're putting cattle ranching, maybe they do some fishing over here in the Mediterranean, in the Nile River, things like that. And of course you can zoom in so it's not so crowded in there like I did. But this really gives students an opportunity to create and build. And you're also that practice when students are building their own, they're building that schema much deeper than just showing them a map that's already done. Think about how you could do this in 8th grade. Maybe we're going to map out the 13 original colonies and the economic activities, the religions of the different colonies. Maybe you're doing something with the Cold War and maybe in world history, and you're looking at, the Soviet US space race, and you're showing like where the different silos were built. And there's all kinds of different things you can put in here. You can add in, like I said, some drawings. You can measure distances, shapes, things like that. Maybe you're looking at Hiroshima and you're mapping the size of the atomic blast and the area that was affected by that. So there's really a lot of really cool things that you can do with these. But some of you may say, oh, this is wonderful, I just don't know what to do with it. And that's where we stepped in with our new mapping programs that I mentioned a few minutes ago, where these lessons are already built for you. You can search them by teaks. You can see which teaks are being covered in each lesson, and you can have the students create a meaningful historical map or conceptual map. There's the mapping our world, which can be used in both 6th and 9th grade. There are different lexiles that are identified there. The lower ones would definitely be better for 6th grade, whereas the higher, maybe you want to save for 9th grade. And then the same thing with Texas history. There's a brand new, just dropped in here a couple of weeks ago, brand new mapping Texas history, which is all about historical mapping and looking specifically at Texas history. Then you have the same thing with US history. You have the first half and the second half. World history has a mapping world history as well. So let's go and take a look at some of those. But before we do, I just want to show you real quick some of the history maps that are available already to you. So you guys saw the ones that were in the atlas. Those are the ones that you can find in the atlases and you can zoom in on and you can look at, but you can't really mark them up or do a whole lot with them. One thing that you might want to do is have your students having an atlas open and also having a map open so they can kind of use the atlas to build some of that information or add those layers onto the map. But here you can see we're looking at slavery and the economy. It has this nice graphic here at the bottom that shows cotton versus the textile industry, urban versus rural, down in these other maps down here in the bottom. So you have access to about 70, 75, 80 plus historical maps that you can pull from different eras, different content, world history, US history, and Texas history, as well as all the maps you'll need for geography. Okay, so now we're going to get into the real meat of the program. And this is what you guys are going to check out through that link that Shirley's providing to you in the facilitator guide there, or in the participation guide. And you'll be able to click on that link and then go in and complete these activities as a student. I'm not going to grade you, so don't worry if you mess up, but I think it's important for you guys to experience what your students might, so that for a couple of reasons. Number one, think about how this is going to help you with your lesson building. How this is going to help your students, but also what problems they might encounter navigating and doing the activity, and what kinds of things can you do to prepare your students prior to that. So I'm going to click on the activities button there. So from the home screen, I guess I better back up and show you. I clicked on that kind of quick. From the home screen here, we're going to click on this little spyglass at the top left-hand side that says activities. And this is how you will find the different items that you will need. So you can search by TEKS, you can search by topic, you can build your own content, you can add a quiz builder, create sets of activities, things like that. But we're going to focus on how you find those mapping activities. And Shirley also provided to you guys in that participant guide, she provided you some other series that I recommended. If you're really wanting to kind of build mapping and really integrate mapping and history, or, just step up your mapping in world cultures, geography, government, whatever it is you want to do there. So I sent her some additional series. So what am I saying when I say series? That's why I clicked on this advanced button over here. So I clicked on activities, then I clicked on this advanced. This is my favorite way to explore Active Classroom because it helps me understand each type of lesson, because there are so many types of lessons. There are so many wonderful things in here. But understanding, if you just search by topic, it's going to pull up a bunch of different series, a bunch of different titles. But this helps you get an understanding of what that series has to offer, because they're consistent. So like the acting history plays are all acting history plays. And as we go down a little bit further, I'm going to click on, I'll just show you here. We've got Atlas of US History, Atlas of World History. Those are wonderful as well. They actually utilize the atlases we looked at earlier, but there are assessments built into it, and there's some new knowledge building in there. The level 1 and the level more of like an assessment with your kids. So check those out. As I scroll through, there's the Desk Atlas that's great for geography classes. The World Atlas is great for world cultures, and the Texas Interactive Mapping are great for Texas history. So we're going to go all the way down here to the M's, and we're going to see that we have Mapping Our World, Mapping Texas History, Mapping the News, Mapping US History, and Mapping World History. So all of these are now available to Dallas ISD, so you guys can access these, you can assign them out to your kids. So let's take a look at, let's just go with Mapping the World. This is a great program here. I really enjoy these. You'll notice the different lifestyle levels. Maybe you want to focus for your world cultures down in the 750 range or something like that, or even up to the 850s, you should be pretty good. And then maybe for your other, geography, stick to the 950s and up. So that's just kind of a way to do that. But you'll notice, I'm sorry.
Jason, I have a question on the Lexile levels.
Sure.
People who are unfamiliar with Active Classroom, can you kind of explain the Lexile levels? Because I know there's sometimes where I may use a 950 for, like that is appropriate maybe for a 5th grade class or something like that. So how do y'all figure those out?
Sure. I mean, that's, it's kind of, you have to look at, Lexile is like the difficulty of words, really, essentially, is what that refers to. And so Shirley, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things is when we look at the Mapping Texas History, you might see for 4th grade, I know some of the 4th grade teachers might want to use it. So you might want to think, you have to do your teacher moves, and you have to say, what do I need to do? What additional scaffolding maybe should I provide for my students based on that? And so the Mapping Texas History, I'm going to use that as my example, maybe some of the words may be a little challenging for your 4th grade students. But that shouldn't stop you guys from working as a class and working through the activity together, because you're going to have so many of those supports built in with all the visuals. Maybe have your students with the Texas History Atlas opened up, and the teacher on the board and calling kids up to, let's mark it here. This is where we're going to build this. This is where we're going to do that. Or maybe the kids following along with a printed outline map down below, and kind of the teacher's modeling and the students are working along with it. So you just have to think about your students whenever you tackle some of these. But the Lexile levels, we go all the way down to about 600, I think, in some of our series. And the 600 is really down in like the third grade reading level. Some may say even a little bit lower than that, but then when you get to, it's kind of overlap in a lot of ways. Like you might be like 4th grade might be 600 to 750 or 800. Same thing with 8th grade or 6th grade, might have 700 or even 650 to 800, 900, somewhere in there. So it's kind of fluid, I guess, is what I should say, because there's a lot of overlap between those. I can probably get you a guide that kind of shows you by grade level, but I wouldn't bog
Yeah.
yourself down too much in that. I would just note that if you're looking at it and it seems high, look at it. If it's saying 1250 and you're trying to give it to sixth graders, you don't want to do that. It might be too complex. So
Mhm.
do you think that answers it pretty well?
Yes,
Sure.
it does, because I notice sometimes that when I go in there, I'm like, oh, we could use this. Whereas at first glance, if I just looked at the Lexile, maybe not, or a teacher may not go into that, but just glance at it and know that you can
That's a
help
really
them through
good
it.
point. And that's something we've struggled with too, is like, do we keep the Lexiles available in here? And we decided to do that because they
It's
do need
fine.
to at least see.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
there's
it's
so many
fine.
times where you might be able to use a part of an activity.
Yeah. Mhm.
And one thing we're doing now is the ability to go in and kind of build your own activities, but to pick and pull things from Active Classroom, and using the quiz builder, you can copy and paste and customize and chunk out bits of text and things like that, and assign out the activity directly that way. But that's for a whole nother day, right? We'll record that video or offer
Yeah.
a training for that, so teachers can play around with that. I'm excited about where we're going with that and some of the developing we're doing. So anyways, so going in through here, I just want to show you kind of a little bit of the structure. There's going to be a close reading exercise that opens each unit, and this is the same for all of the mapping programs. Texas does fall a little bit different, but not too much there. I think it doesn't have like the research presentation and things like that, but you'll see that they start off with a close reading exercise, then some activities that are going to be digital, and then followed by some writing prompts, a quiz, and then a mapping research presentation project. So let's take a look at what this might look like here. And so I'm going to go ahead and open it up from the teacher view. And we're going to start off from the teacher view for just a minute. And then I'm going to take you into what you guys are going to be looking at this evening, or whenever you have a chance to dig in with that link that we provide to you. So here we go. The map is going to start loading in. It's going to give us this map, and then it's going to change here in a second. And we are looking at the teacher side of things. So it may look a little crowded as it filters in and kind of adds some things in, but this is what it should look like when the students have completed the activity. Whereas the students, when they receive it, it will look like this. They will have a map, and they will have instructions over here to the right-hand side. On top of that, they also can click on this to go right to the atlas that correlates with this program. And sometimes it'll be a specific page, and there'll be a link that they can click on that takes them to that specific page. So these, what I really like about these is that it's procedural text. So it's step-by-step instructions, but it's not just do this, then do this, then do this. There's actually content embedded in that procedural text. And so right here, right off the bat, Mexico shares a boundary with the United States. They could have said a line between Mexico and the United States, but it's kind of laying the groundwork there, a boundary between the two. The two countries have important economic ties. So you see that it's not just draw this line here at this degree, draw this, circle this country, write in the name of the country. It's actual meaningful content as the students are reading through it. And so it says, what are some of the economic ties between the United States and Mexico? And so then it's going to lead us into that. And we're going to title the map Major Industries of Mexico. On top of that, let's say you have students that struggle with reading and they're really having a hard time reading this text. We do have the ability to have it read to the students, so they can click where they want it read, and it will highlight the word as it's being read to the students. They can adjust the speed of that. They can translate this. So if you wanted to, let's say you have a student that's ELL and maybe Spanish is their primary language, they could click on this button here and it defaults to Spanish. But in Dallas ISD, I know you guys have even more languages besides Spanish. And we have about 30 different languages that students can select from, including Burmese. And Farsi and Vietnamese and Chinese, 3 forms of that. A lot of really good supports to help your kids. And a lot of the languages too, it'll actually read to them in their native language. Now, not all of them. I know some of the Asian languages, like Vietnamese, is not will not read to them. But another thing I think about whenever I share that that function there with you guys is you're not only your students need the support, but think about your kids during the pandemic when they're home with their parents, and maybe their parents are not native English speakers. The ability for their parents to be able to translate the content, maybe their kid's a fluid English speaker, but the parent needs to explain something to them. So what a great tool to use so the parents can translate, they can explain it then in their own words to the kid. And I just think that's a wonderful support tool. But sorry, I didn't mean to get too deep into that. We're focused on this here. So you'll see it has additional instructions. And then here it's talking about the oil map. And so notice when I hover over the oil map, it makes a little hand and I click on it and it has an additional map built into it. So it's not just text. It's not just kids reading through this. There are visuals, little stamps showing them which stamp to use. So it's telling them to put this stamp in the Bay of Campeche. And notice when I open this up, it's different from our interactive map that we looked at earlier. Remember, you had all those categories and all those different symbols. This one is very targeted. So it only has the images that students need for this specific lesson, which is very helpful, I think. So kids aren't having to dig and look for things. So the kids will work through this. They're learning about this relationship between the United States and Mexico. They're learning about the different trade agreements we've had throughout the years. They're looking at the oil producers and they're kind of making connections going, oh, well, I didn't realize that, Mexico produced their own oil. I didn't realize that, we had some of that trade there. And it says about 80% of Mexico's oil exports are sent to the United States. So that's something the kids don't always connect with right away. But it helps them as they're mapping it out and they're marking it on the maps, they're building that schema as Shirley talked about. So that's really kind of a quick overview of that. Now what I'm going to do is go back in and show you guys just real quickly from the student view so that you guys are comfortable with what to do after you register. So once you click on that link that Shirley's providing in that guide, it will take you to this page. And I've already set you up as a teacher. I've gone in and assigned everything out to you prior to you joining my class. Just make sure that when you do, and I'll show you one more time here at the end how to register before we go, but I'm just going to show you how to navigate as a student. So I've set everything up for you. I've shared with you atlases, and that is one thing that you guys as teachers, as you begin to use these different features in Active Classroom, if you want your students to see the atlas, you have to share it with them. And so there's a spot to do that under the Atlas tab in the teacher page. Underneath each atlas, there's a button that says share, and you click on that and you share it with your students. And that's so your kids don't have every single atlas and they're not having to try to figure out, well, which one does my teacher want me to look at? The teacher can specifically share the atlases they want them to. So you can see here, I've shared with my students all of the atlases because I wasn't sure those of you participating what grade levels would be attending. So I wanted to make sure everybody had access to that. We also have the maps up here. So we'll have access to the full range of those maps. And I'm not going to even let that load there because you guys have seen what that looks like. The discussion forum, this is only if you post questions in there that the students would use that. And you get notifications whenever a student posts a question, posts a comment, different things like that. But you're going to spend most of your time here at the assignments and grades. And open this up, you can see I've assigned out and I've given you the specific grade levels that I want you to look at. Feel free, if you want to, you teach 4th grade, but you want to see what they're doing in 10th grade. I don't know why you would, but if you did, you wanted to, or maybe you have a student that's, a child of yours that's in 10th grade in Dallas ISD, and you wanted to see what their 10th grade teacher could offer to them, go for that. But right here, you will see where you can launch it. And so you simply click on the launch button. And it's going to look just like we saw earlier from my teacher page. And you'll be able to work through and try out the different tools that are built in there, use the toolkit. be able to see what the lesson has to offer, use the translation tools. If you want to try out, there's a highlighting tool in there and things like that. Like if you want to, I'm going to highlight this word democracy, and I'm going to click on the little highlighter tool, and it defaults, you can preset these, but it defaults to these topics right here: geographic terms, highlight main idea. I'm just going to do supporting evidence for this one, so the kids can mark these up as they read through them. But you can see here, it's all laid out for me. It has the step-by-step instructions. I can move my map around. Governments of Europe, that's what I'm going to add to my map. So I'm going to click on the title. I'm going to add my title here, Governments of Europe. And there it is. So you can walk through these, try it step by step. Again, don't forget the little highlighted in teal. Those indicate additional images, maps, graphs, charts, all kinds of things like that. So whenever you see those show up, and this one does not have a lot. Here we go. This one's showing the European Union. And so this one's going to be updated here pretty soon, I'm sure, since Great Britain, I know there's still some ties and things going on with that, but eventually will be removed off of that. So that's kind of like overview on how to navigate that. So if you have any questions, Shirley can provide you with my email as well. So I'd be happy to help out if you want me to come by your campus and work with you guys. Anything like that, we're more than happy. Just work through Shirley or whoever your, the coach you work with, and invite me out. I'd love to come and work with you guys and help you get your kids a little bit deeper into this. Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is to show you how to register. So I'm just going to show you the link that you're going to get. This is the link that Shirley put in the guide. So I'm going to copy and paste this over here into that. And this is what it will look like. Again, do not use your Dallas ISD email address. It will tell you that you're already registered. Instead, just create a fake email. I'll delete these probably in a couple of weeks. I'll delete the class and everything, but all you have to do is put in your name, fake email, set a password. It's got to be 6 characters, and then select. You may have different classes showing up in here, but select the one that says Dallas ISD, January 4th. Select that, agree to terms, and then register. And it will take you right to that student homepage after you do so. So that's kind of the long and short of it. I've shared with you several different things that you can start using immediately in your classroom to help kids really build that mental mapping, build that schema, that background knowledge, really connect concepts and historical events to a place, to really anchor it in, to make sense of it. So Shirley, thank you so much for having me out, and I always love working with you guys at Dallas ISD. And Keandra, great to see you as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you,
Do you want me to
Jason.
stop sharing, or do you want to take the sharing?
Well, I think that about concludes our training, because the last few slides that were on the PowerPoint doesn't really apply to people watching it this way. But I will say on the participant guide, I have included contact names. If you have any questions, call me. My email is on there as well. If you want us to come to your campus and do a training in your PLC, that's available too. It really just depends where you are in active classroom and everything, and what you want to work on. So just let me know what you're most interested in. And thank you so much for tuning in for the training. And you guys, can you think of anything else that we need to tell them? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.